You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to Perfect 10. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and you might be asking yourself a question. It's a Saturday. How come there's a new episode of Perfect 10? Doesn't Perfect 10 post on Fridays usually? Is this weird? Is this a late episode? But you know what? My guest and I, we were so excited to talk about this. We've been talking about doing this episode since we recorded the second episode of Perfect 10 about Transformers, the movie, the soundtrack. And so, we just couldn't wait anymore. And we wanted to get this out to you guys as soon as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome my guest host for this episode, Tyler James Nicol. How's it going, Tyler?
It's going very well. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back. I guess the last time we were talking, it was the Transformers, the movie, the soundtrack, which I was listening to this morning, specifically the this Cybertronic spree version.
Yeah. Everybody's got to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't listened to it yet. It's fantastic. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're not talking about the Transformers today.
No.
Today on this episode, we are talking about a cinematic masterpiece, the culmination of years of superhero storytelling on film, and arguably one of the best superhero movies of all time, and that's Spider-Man 3.
It
right?
is, without exaggeration, probably the superhero movie I have watched the most times.
There you go. And
that's
if that's
fact.
If that's not an indicator of quality, I don't know what is.
Well, I
mean, maybe writing, directing, score.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You know who decides quality? Do you know who decides quality on some things? Is the Academy a decider of quality for you? Like the Academy Awards, Oscar winners?
Yeah.
Because in this film we have Oscar nominee Kirsten Dunst, Oscar nominee Thomas Hayden Church, Oscar nominee, Oscar winner J.K. Simmons, Oscar nominee Rosemary Harris, Oscar Primetime Emmy Award winner Elizabeth Banks, Oscar winner Cliff Robertson, Oscar four-time Oscar nominee Willem Dafoe, Daytime Emmy Award winner Topher Grace, and Oscar nominee James Franco. So, you tell me, that cast, that many artists working together on a project, you're telling me what comes out at the end of that isn't art? So
has Tobey Maguire? Yeah, I didn't. Did you name Tobey Maguire as one of those nominees?
I forgot to look up Tobey Maguire. Hold on, give me a second.
What a perfect what an absolute, you forgot to look up the youth pastor.
Golden Globes nominee.
Golden Globes nominee. There you go.
Kids Choice Awards nominee. And 2003 MTV Movie Award nominee, or Movie Award winner for Best Kiss with Kirsten Dunst. So that's not
there
nothing.
You go.
He also won 2 awards for this movie, or nominated for 2 awards for this movie from the Scream Awards. So,
excellent. Yeah,
and Teen Choice Awards also swept in Spider-Man 3 nominations, not wins, nominations.
So Spider-Man 3, Tyler, why don't you, in Perfect 10 fashion, tell us exactly what is a Spider-Man?
All right, well, a Spider-Man, listen, bud, he's got the radioactive blood, all right? And you might be asking yourself, can he swing from a thread? Just take a look overhead. That's what I will say to you. what a Spider-Man. Spider-Man has been a classic representation through Marvel comic books by creator Stan Lee and several other artists who actually did most of the work. Um, he was supposed to be the everyman superhero. Spider-Man, he's got the powers, he's got the responsibilities, but he also has the day-to-day trials and tribulations that the reader of the comic would have. And that's kind of what made him unique as a superhero. If you show Spider-Man to most kids, they will be happy that you're giving them that Spider-Man toy or comic or movie. It's just going to happen. I'm sure as someone who actually has children in their lives, whereas I am just a child inside. Your kids like Spider-Man?
They do, in fact, they love Spider-Man. As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, they love Spider-Man so much that there are three spiders in a show that they quite enjoy, being Spider-Man. In this one, they call him Spin, which is Miles Morales,
Hmm.
and then Ghost Spider, which is Gwen
Hmm.
Stacy,
Hmm.
but not the Gwen Stacy that we'll be talking about in this film.
No, not Bryce Dallas Howard, who I did not
No,
check if Bryce Dallas Howard was nominated for any Oscars.
I don't know.
Let's just
You know what? I don't think so.
see. Probably not.
Yeah, not so much.
No, but 21 wins and 30 nominations for Bryce Dallas Howard. So, nothing to
There you
snuff
go.
at there. But yeah, so Spider-Man 3 is the third in the trilogy of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, which one could argue were as influential towards the current Marvel universe as any of the actual MCU films. And then eventually became part of the MCU films thanks to retroactive canon. But this is what we were getting at the time. This is the stuff 2007. I was looking it up. Do you know the superhero movies that came out in 2007?
In 2007.
In 2007.
So
Name one more
we're
superhero movie.
yeah. I know we're a year after um X3.
Uh-huh.
So watching that trilogy really finish off with a bang. Um I think maybe in the same year as Spider-Man 3 did we get another Fantastic Four
We
film?
did get Rise of the Silver Surfer in
Yeah, yeah.
which was played by both Lawrence Fishburne and Doug Jones to make that one character happen. Had the Fantastic Car. I could talk about that movie if we like. I won't though. We also had the film Underdog. The live
There we
action
go.
interpretation of Underdog came out. So it wasn't like a dense year for superhero movies, but people were hungry for them. The day of its release in 2007, this film, Spider Man 3, set the worldwide single day record for box office at $104 million. Do you know what movie beat that $104 million first opening box office? Also
Like
Spider-Man
the
3. The next day it made $117 million.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, if we're talking 2007, like the next year would have been Dark Knight. Yeah, the Dark Knight, right? That's
Yeah,
2008.
listen, I'm not here to talk about those films. I'm here to talk about Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we know. Spider-Man 3, number 3 grossing film the year it came out, if we want to talk about like inequality of films to box office
Yep.
return. So it made worldwide gross $894 million, beating out Shrek the Third, the first Transformers, Ratatouille, I Am Legend, the Simpsons movie, and National Treasure 2, which is also, by the way, a perfect 10.
There you go.
I'm just gonna say it. It lost, of course, to Harry Potter and Pirates of the Caribbean, but what you gonna do? But so this film, top to bottom, rewatchable, quotable. If people are referencing a Sam Raimi Spider-Man, it's probably gonna be Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting a quote or a meme or a reference, this is the one that stuck with people.
Yeah, yeah, because
Because
I mean, like, this film has a meme for every occasion.
it
Like, if
really
you're
does.
eating a piece of pie, this
Well, ask
film
me how the
has a
pie
meme
is,
for it.
Michael.
Yeah,
Ask me how
how
the
is the
pie is.
pie?
So good.
Well, how is it?
It's so good.
So good.
So good.
Every
That
time I
quote,
say the word "so good," it's
so
that is
good.
how I say the word "so good."
That is
So
the horniest so good in the history of film.
good.
um the special effects on this film, first of all, CG and practical on
Mhm.
Sandman. So practical that Thomas Hayden Church accidentally punched a real brick at one point in the film. They told him it was going to be a breakaway brick. The breakaway was 3 of his fingers. So, like, that is commitment to
Yeah.
the artistry of the film that is Spider-Man 3. Now, I do want to put it out there, just in case people are wondering, this movie is very, very bad.
just in case
Like,
you didn't
just
figure it out. Yeah.
I got a few minutes into this, and I just wanted to clarify that I am aware, like, my
Mhm.
eyes are connected to parts that work with stuff, and my heart is a human functioning heart with a brain. Like, I've seen the movie many, many times, dozens of times. It's
Yeah.
very bad, but
Mm.
it's the perfect bad.
Yeah.
Like, it hits that sweet spot of them doing some really cool stuff, and you also being able to feel for a fact that everyone making it didn't want to finish this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
This it,
I have never seen such
yeah.
a begrudgingly finished film in my
It's
life.
listen, for those who don't know, and this is the thing. I'll just relay a little bit of my experience at the time, right? I mean, Spider-Man 1. So the first Spider-Man, kind of going into it, I didn't really like the idea of Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. I've never really enjoyed him except in No Way Home.
Mhm.
It's just not my cup of tea. Like Andrew Garfield, way better. Tom Holland is pitch perfect in my opinion. You can take whatever you have to say about like the MCU version of Spider-Man. Regardless, Tom Holland's portrayal of Peter Parker for me is like that's the character. Like that's
Mhm.
him. That's the
Mhm.
character, right? Tobey Maguire's kind of take it or leave it. I wasn't super psyched about the first movie. I was actually kind of grumpy about it when it was originally coming out. Then I saw it in the theater, right? I wasn't gonna see it opening night. My friend Josh convinced me to come with him to see it opening night. And so I did. And and I was really mad about the Green Goblin as well. I was like, he looks like a robot. Why does he look like
I
a
mean,
robot? Like I
I'm
was,
not here to defend the
yeah.
Power Ranger Goblin costume because we've seen the
And I mean, like now,
screencasts for what could
yeah,
have been, and that was amazing.
now we know why, and it's because it was a lot easier to animate the CG shiny robot Green Goblin than
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
fabric. But I walked away from that movie like, oh my god, that's one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life, right?
Let
Because
alone
at the
not just
time,
comic book movies, but like that's just in terms of
movie,
going to a
yeah,
cinema and having a time
yeah,
that was up
yeah,
there.
yeah. Spider-Man, he shot the webs out of him, and then he did the swinging, and he could jump and
Yep.
stick to walls. And
They
I
made him
was
do the
like,
practical catch of all that stuff on a sticky tray, and they took like 80
yeah,
tries to get it right.
yeah. I mean, well, like what a movie, right? And
Everyone in high
then
school is minimum 25 years old. It was a great film.
and then Spider-Man 2 comes out a few years later, a couple years later. And and holy crap, Spider-Man 2 is just like at the time, obviously. In retrospect, we look back at it and it's like, there's some things,
In retrospect,
but
Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2 is one of the worst doctors in the history of doctoring.
just a terrible doctor.
Just, hey, we're
Terrible
going to try the
doctor.
first try of this. No blast shield, no safety protocols. Everybody just come into my rustic apartment and we're
Yeah.
going to do our best
Yeah.
harnessing the power of the sun.
Yeah. Um yeah, just absolutely no
You see
no
this chip?
scientific
I
rigor
called it the
whatsoever.
MacGuffin. It's going to come into play in about 4 minutes.
Yeah. Um, but listen, those opening credits with the Alex Ross art, if that doesn't get you hyped up for a movie, nothing will. Like seriously,
Alex
if
Ross
you're
art and Danny Elfman music, very of
yeah,
note, both of them not in this film.
if that opening doesn't like get you welling up with tears, then you need to go directly to the hospital because I think you're dead. I think your
You
heart
gotta
is
check.
no longer beating, and you need to immediately go see a cardiac
A
surgeon because I
series of
think that
doctors.
you've had an infarction of some kind. I and then we get to Spider-Man 3, and the hype is
Oh,
unbelievable, right?
you
Like the
could
hype,
not. This is as hyped as anything
yeah.
within the last 10 years of comic book
I
movies.
I don't think I've ever been as excited for a movie as I was for Spider-Man 3.
Oh, that's
And I
very
can
sad to
say
know.
that I can say that because Spider-Man 3 broke me, right? I'll never ever be as excited for a film as I was for Spider-Man 3 because I will never allow myself to be that heartbroken ever again.
So back in the day for these kinds of films,
Yeah.
before they figured out that technically speaking on the West Coast we could just do like a 9 or 7 o'clock screening on the Thursday because that still counted as like East Coast midnight release time.
Yeah.
So there would be the midnight screenings at the Silver City. And I went with a group of friends and we drove down to a midnight Spider-Man 3 screening. And keeping in mind, Spider-Man 3 is, let's just double check the runtime on this. That is 138 minutes. So it's just over 2 hours. So you're coming out about 2 a.m. from Spider-Man 3. And I will say, at the time, if you told me, hey, that's going to be the comic book movie you watch the most, I'd be like, to atone for what sin? What
Yeah.
terrible thing shall I do where I am forced to once again watch that flaming garbage pile of a film that I
Yeah.
just sat through until 2 in the morning when I had to drive back, and it'd be like, hey, listen, if I fall asleep driving and that's the last thing we saw, we deserve whatever happens next. Like,
Yeah. 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 What did you do to upset Zeus so much that he concocted this punishment for you? Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Sam
And
Raimi did not want to make this particular. He wanted to make another Spider-Man film.
yeah.
He did not want to
Yeah.
make this Spider-Man
And
film.
that's see, now in the year of our Lord Spider-Man, our Lord Spider-Man,
Yeah.
2023, we know so much more about what went into this film. We know we know even the stuff that went into the second Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire's antics and the
hmm
my back and whatnot. So we already know going into this movie that Tobey Maguire is a little bit of a diva after having been the Spider-Man in the first film, and he wants more money, more money, more money. And
How
going
dare
into
he
the
get some of the money off of this movie that only grossed a meager $800 million?
yeah, absolutely. But now we also know that like Sam wanted to make Spider-Man 3. He wanted to make a third Spider-Man, but
Mhm.
Venom had nothing to do with it.
No,
I
Vulture, still
I
a V villain.
yeah, it was gonna be Sandman and Vulture, right? That was
Yeah, I believe they were in
the
talks with a
duo.
Ben Kingsley Vulture, and then when they
My
didn't get it
goodness.
for when they were trying to do 4, the rumored casting for 4 was going to be a John Malkovich Vulture.
Um, and man, Ben Kingsley Vulture would have been just
Well,
so
see, Sam
perfect.
Raimi understands a thing that stands out still with all of the villains. You want a good
Yeah,
comic book villain, you get a stage actor.
yeah,
You
yeah,
get
yeah,
someone who's going to be playing to the cheap seats. You got your Defoes, you got your Molinas. They are not going to leave a crumb left on that table of villainy. It is going to just
yeah,
num 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 num. It's going to be delicious. And then you get to this movie. He still brings in Thomas Hayden Church, hot off that Sideways Oscar stuff.
yeah,
Um, and like he's doing a great job. Obviously, there's love for him there. He's trying to get that whole story out. And then he's forced with these other characters. Like now, bring in Eddie Brock. Bring to me Eric Foreman. Like,
yeah.
and,
So
hey, hell of a career, Eric Foreman, more than I'm ever going to do. Great in the Oceans movies. But in this, oh boy.
it was a deviation, right? And I think intentionally that Sam wanted to like put his mark on the character of Eddie Brock and was like, look, if we're gonna have a foil for Spider-Man, we're not gonna go with because Eddie was a worse version of Flash in the comics, right?
Yeah,
Like
and also the thing about Eddie is so like if you looked at Eddie and Peter Parker, Eddie looked like he was already going to be Peter Parker's bully.
mhm,
Like he was a big old
exactly,
beefcake of a man who
yeah,
like even with Peter Parker having Spider-Man powers, it still looked like Eddie could get a swing in.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
might not win the fight, but he's going to feel it the next morning.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so going with an alternate version of Peter Parker for the Eddie Brock character was a choice.
Which
It
they
was
should have just brought
interesting.
in the animated voice and had Hank Azaria come in. I believe he was. I'm gonna double check what I just said, but I think Hank
Yeah,
Azaria was Eddie Brock.
I mean, like, listen, it sounds right. It sounds right.
Yes, he was.
It was the
He was Eddie
90s.
Brock in the Spider-Man
Yeah.
cartoon.
Um I oh my god. So just a quick detour into the Spider-Man cartoon version of Venom.
We've been so focused
Um
so far.
yeah, the the strict adherence to the red blue lighting on Venom, so that
The
you always
bisexual lighting to
understood.
get that flare,
Yeah,
yeah.
you always understood two things about Venom: that that he's Spider-Man's villain, so there's red and blue, and also that there's a duality going on here, red being evil and blue being good. So he's always fighting with himself,
Star
right?
Wars
Because
rules.
he's an anti-hero. Yeah, exactly.
Red bad, blue good.
Yeah, and yeah, like they obviously, because it's animation, you create a style guide for a character, and in that style guide for that character is the red blue lighting.
Mhm.
And it didn't matter what environment he was in. It didn't matter if it was broad daylight or pitch black. One side was red, one side was blue. You guys, that's how we're gonna do it. That's how we're gonna do it every single time. And if I were making a Venom film, of which there are two, also perfect 10 bad movies. Like, this is like a new category of
I'm here to
perfect 10.
explore
Like,
every perfect 10 terrible thing with you.
yeah, I because I love both of those movies so much. Like, the first one in particular, that first Venom movie is just like, oh my god, it's just like it's just nom 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 nom. It's so good.
Particularly for
It's
the
so
fact where
good.
it's like, so we can't even reference Spider-Man.
Yeah,
No!
yeah.
Like, no, not even a little. Like, all
Not
right.
you can't even. Yeah, hey, listen, we don't even want a glib sideways reference to a spider in this, all right?
No,
But
no.
what we do want, Tom Hardy getting in a lobster tank, and they got it. They got it.
I
So
believe actually that I think, if I'm to believe some of the other videos I've watched about, that might have been an improv.
yeah, yeah, that's what I've heard as well. Is that was like, and it was Tom Hardy's idea, that he
Now,
wanted to
I
get
didn't
in
think
the
I was going to
lobster
circle
tank.
around to this early, but I do want to point out a
Yeah,
thing, and it's a thing I missed from back in the day of having some trash comic book movies. A thing that we don't do anymore because they're all focused on making good video games. Is that it
yeah,
used to be a movie came out, you get a video game adaptation of it. And for
yeah.
Spider-Man 3, the video game adaptation dropped same day as film release, which is amazing. And also, they added about 8 more villains to that game, including Dr. Michael Morbius in the PlayStation versions.
And if memory serves, it is atrocious. Like, if you think the movie is bad, like if you think like look up some cutscenes for Spider-Man 3, the video game. Again, Spider-Man 2, the movie, phenomenal.
The video game quite good.
Redefined what superhero movies were at the time, right? The video game, likewise, perfect video game. Like, Spider-Man 2 on the GameCube and PlayStation 2 was about as good as it got in
If
that
you like
generation.
saving kids balloons, then I have the best news for
Oh
you
my god.
about a video game adaptation.
But it, like, so good. Spider-Man 2 was so good that it took them what, like 15 years, maybe more, to come back and like
It's like,
recapture how good it felt to swing through, like, to web
oh,
swing through that
sorry, the
city
video game was so
in
good.
the
How
new
long did
one.
it take? I'm like, there's like 4 years
Yeah, yeah.
between 2 and 3. Calm down.
No, no. I'm talking about the new Spider-Man game, right?
The new
Like, it took.
Spider-Man game is some of the most fun I've had playing a video game.
Yeah, yeah.
Same with the
And
Miles Morales one. Super excited for the next one coming out. All of those are just the only things that are bad about the Spider-Man game. And I'll say this right now. Again, this is the most focused episode of
yeah,
this ever. Is on the modern Spider-Man game. They're like, hey, you know how you're like swinging through the city and you feel kind of like a god, and this is the most fun you've ever had? Have you thought about hiding behind a drink cart and moving really slowly to the next room? would that
yeah.
would that not interrupt the flow of the fun
It's
you're having right now, but in fact
it's
enhance it?
it's almost like, it's almost misogynistic in the way that it's designed, of like, hey, are you having the most fun you've ever had playing a video game? Well, now be a girl. And you're like,
And that
okay,
brings us back
I'm
to
actually fine.
Spider-Man 3's portrayal of Mary
Yeah,
Jane Watson.
it's like, I'm actually fine with that. And then they're like, no, 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 drink
No,
cart.
it's
And you're like, oh,
yeah, no,
okay,
it's real
I
bad.
guess this is less fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully they fix that and we get Gwen Stacy soon in one of them, and then we can and then we can Spider Gwen around the city, and
So dear
they'll make
precious
up for that.
listener who has made it this far into this
Yeah.
podcast, first of all, I hope you're having a great day. I hope if you're off on a walk that it's very pleasant weather, not even too sunny, overcast. I like it. If you're driving your car right now, please check your mirrors. Just do a quick one. You don't know what's around. But you might be thinking, what more could you possibly say about this film? And I want to point something out about this film. It is
Mm.
astounding how every single choice was the wrong one in a
Yeah.
row.
Yeah.
Every choice. How do we have the Venom symbiote show up? Because in the last film, we did show that we have an astronaut character that went to space, and Venom is from space. Should they get involved? Well, we could storyboard it, but we're not going to film it. Rock falls to the ground, goo goes onto Peter. Done and done. Move along.
Yeah.
Like, all right, off to a really good start. Hey, Mary Jane maybe could have more of a character in this. She could like have a bit more personality. She should be going through her own stuff. No, she should get fired from one job and try to compare that to saving the city and really just not listen to any advice whatsoever. And then, by the way, at the end, get kidnapped. It's
Yeah.
it's a
Perfect.
lot of choices. Hey,
No.
Harry Osborn's going to take on the mantle of the Goblin, so he could be Hobgoblin. We could do our version. We could do a different version of the Green Goblin. No, no, no. Stay with me. You ever played like a snowboarding video game? All right. Take one of those characters, and here's what you're going to do. Not edit it. But what you are is going to make it float on a sky stick, official name for the device he uses. I know this because there was an action figure that talked that had the following line: I can go anywhere on my sky stick. Goodbye, gravity. That is in my head for forever. And we are going to have Peter Parker murder him. Because the way that New Goblin falls, which is, by the way, his canonical name in this, the way that bad choice, the way that New Goblin falls when Peter Parker clotheslines him 5 stories in the air in a dark alley is to just Wile E. Coyote bing bong off of every single metal object with his
Yeah.
neck and head before hitting the ground and entering a brief coma. And Peter's like, oh, whoopsie ding. hope that works out for him. And it does, because he comes back with the happiest amnesia. And as someone who has had 7 concussions in his life, which my doctor informed me was too many, I will say, you don't really bounce back from that kind of intense brain injury that fast.
Yeah.
Again, fascinating choices. But the follow up to that, he's like, okay, we got the amnesia. Then the amnesia goes away. He turns evil. He comes back. What should Peter do for the second time of dealing with this friend, having seen the consequences of his actions? Throw a grenade at his face? Don't mind if I do. But the
Yeah.
good news is, at
This
the end of all that, Harry's like, I should probably forgive him. No, you shouldn't. He murdered you twice. I think you can do whatever now.
it kind of makes you think of that moment in No Way Home when Tom Holland Spider-Man realizes that other Spider-Mans just they just murk their bad guys. That's how
Yeah.
they deal with it. Is that like he's like wait a second, you're all dead? And it's like and he's like, and then he sort of thinks back and goes like, well, I actually tried to save now granted,
Yeah, like
Mysterio does
Vulture
end
went
up
to
dead,
jail,
but
and I think he's
yeah.
fine now in a different film universe where he inexplicably got his jet wings back.
I still haven't seen that movie, so no
Oh,
spoilers.
it has never been Morbin time for you.
It's not. I've Morbin time has never
I will say,
occurred in my
if you want to,
presence.
okay, back to back though. So this is like, how is this a
Yeah,
perfect bad movie? You watch Morbius, and you're like, oh, I'm not having fun in this. Because like, and they're somehow having more fun than I like. So you're watching Spider-Man 3, they're not having fun, but it's fun to watch them not have fun.
yeah, yeah.
Morbius, they're having a hoot, and it feels like every time they smile, it's giving me the middle finger. Like, just stop. No,
Yeah.
you can't think this is good.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So, anyways, we're gonna get back right to the beginning. I'm gonna recap all
Yeah.
of Spider-Man 3. So Flint Marko. He escapes from jail after killing Uncle Ben. By the way, Flint Marko killed Uncle Ben. We're going to recap that. We're going full original Batman film, where instead of the other killer, it turns out that the villain of this piece actually created the superhero. Anyways, so we're going to go back. Flint Marko's escaping jail. He puts on his favorite stripy t-shirt, and it's very important that we get a good full shot of that. Talks to his dying daughter so that we know that he is a human with emotions. And then stumbles into a midnight science experiment where
Yeah.
upon stumbling into this like field, a scientist does call out like, "Hey, there's been a weight change," and another scientist is like, "It's probably a bird." Which like two things: one, you got to have a camera set up on this, right? Like otherwise,
Yeah.
how are you measuring the science you're doing from a
the
bunker?
very the also like just for safety reasons because of the very large open pit of sand. But yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's actually three things now. Okay, so one, there should have been a camera. Two,
Yeah.
how heavy do you think birds are? Because that is the weight
Yeah.
of a rather beefy man.
Yeah, Thomas Hayden Church ain't nothing to shake a stick at,
I
right?
don't
Like
think he got
he's
hollow
a big
bones.
guy.
I think that is just meat all the
Yeah.
way through. That's a milk
Yeah.
fed boy. And
Yeah.
three,
Neither
even
of
if it
us are
is a
small guys, right? And I think
yeah,
that Thomas Hayden Church would like make us look a little shrinky in comparison, right?
yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
three, and I think most importantly, also don't kill the bird. like, like okay,
Isn't
it's a
that going
bird.
yeah. So what are you guys trying to do? We're gonna zap
The
some
sand.
sand. To what end? To see what happens to the sand. Don't you think that a bird being in that sand is gonna, I don't know, alter the chemistry a little bit? Because sand, is made up of sand. And birds are made up of a lot of things that aren't sand. So what happens if we zap a bird with the zap ray
You
that
know
we're
what
gonna
I
zap
did?
the sand with?
I feel okay. I feel silly now because I was just thinking.
Mhm.
I was trying to realize what actually was happening. That was actually a very subtle nod to the classic Spider-Man villain, Doctor Birdsand,
Dr. Bird sand. Oh
and
my
he
god.
was trying to make his famous Sandbirds,
Yeah. I feel I feel stupid now that you've said it.
right?
Uh,
We all
yeah,
remember it's. I think he was
unbelievable.
introduced in the classic animated, the original
Yeah.
animated Spider-Man and Friends. I
It's
think
like
that's where I
it's
saw
like
him.
it's like when you bring up that Batman has a villain named Egghead and you're like,
Yeah,
"So what's his deal?" "Well, he's got a head shaped somewhat like an egg." Like so like he like looks like an egg? "Well, no, he's just a bald man that wears a white suit, so he's the Kingpin." No, no, this is before the Kingpin. Is it before the Kingpin? I don't know. But he is just a fancy bald man that calls himself Egghead. And the yoke's on you, Batman. That's pretty much it.
do you think when
That's the
Frank
whole thing.
Robbins first wrote down Man Bat as a Batman villain, he just gave everybody a high five and walked out of the room?
It was one of those moments where he definitely like he did that and went like just on a whiteboard, just man bat, and
Yeah.
just like turned around, looked at everybody, silence in the room, silence, turned back around, underlined man bat, and then put the whiteboard marker down and left the room.
Yeah,
And
he
and
came
and
back briefly to ask for the contents of everyone's wallets. It's just like, no, no, no. Come on.
Yeah, and it's a concept so simple it literally writes itself, except that it doesn't.
It didn't.
There's a lot of steps between writing the words man bat and then figuring out how we
Didn't
make
write
that an
itself until
actual villain.
goddamn 1970. Look at me changing history.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Man bat.
Uh, so
Is this the thing? Yeah.
so Spider-Man 3, I will say J.K. Simmons, best casting in the history of comic book films.
Yep.
Like just
So
there's
good,
no
so
other
good. Why bother changing it? Why bother
so
changing
good
it?
that any other film after that could
Yeah.
not cast it again.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, no. Anyone we do will be a disservice to that actor, no matter how good a job they do.
Yeah.
Like we're just gonna wait until we can circle the metaverse back around to J.K. Simmons. That's all we're
Sometimes
gonna do.
yeah. Sometimes you just get it right on the first try and there's no point. There's
Yeah.
no point in yeah, because all you get look, listen, Jim Gordon in all these Batman movies, there's so many Jim Gordons, you know
Oh
what I
yeah, yeah.
mean? And like and
Including
and
J.K.
and
Simmons.
including J.K. Simmons. And mileage is gonna vary. But that like I think that everybody who's played the character has brought their own charm to it, and there's been special stuff in each of those performances. But J. Jonah Jameson, uh nobody else is gonna do it. Nobody else is gonna do it as well as
There's
J.K.
not a
Simmons.
single
I mean,
actor who should ever do J. Jonah Jameson's voice again.
no. Uh yeah. Yeah, perfect. No notes.
That done. Um, so he's great in this film. He's chewing every scene. The scene of him just even the scene of him staring at Peter Parker putting his feet up on his desk and unwrapping a candy with his mouth is worth the price of the ticket. Like, honestly, in retrospect, I'd be like, no, if it was just that on a loop for the whole 2 hours, it would have been fine.
I think that was the moment when a lot of us who are J.K. Simmons fans looked at that actor and went, he is going to win an Academy Award one day.
Right?
Not for this. Not for this.
No.
Probably for being an abusive drum teacher. But
I mean, it was weird that we called it that far back, but yeah.
It was oddly specific, but definitely it was the vibe, right? But yeah, definitely watching that, you were like this, the ability to emote simply with not even like the bottom half of his face, just the top half of his face.
Honestly, I think at that point it was like the droop of a cigar that was really
Yeah.
doing most of the work there. Ted
Like-
Raimi also just like the perfect back and forth between those two. Anything that happens in the offices of
Yeah.
the Daily Bugle is peak cinema in this film.
Yeah,
And that's a fact.
absolutely.
And you could try, I could hear your brain try to figure out if I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. Even Peter slamming Eddie Brock up against the wall, but like, come on, cut a guy a break, Parker. Like, no, it's great.
It's yeah. Can we talk about emo Peter for a minute? Because I
was,
feel like
I was saving treats so we could pepper it through. Because
Okay.
again, this is going to be a 2-hour podcast. We were trying to get this up to the same running length of the feature film Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3. And it's actually a surprise if you start this podcast when you start the film, it actually syncs up.
Yeah, it's a joke from a podcast I love called Super Ego, which is like, I've seen all 3 Spider-Man 2s. But there's 3 Spider-Man 2s and there's 2 Spider-Man 3s, which I think is pretty special.
That's yes. This is it's magic numbers, right? There's some numerology there.
There's definitely I think what is that like geometry with like mystical geometry, that kind of thing going on.
Sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry, thank you, yes. But yeah, emo Spider-Man, strong choice. Yeah. That would be that has to be the phrase one would use for that direction, is strong choice.
It coming out of the movie and trying to justify some of the choices, there was a period of time where I was like, well, you have to think about it from the perspective of Sam Raimi and what he was going for, which was the idea that the symbiote makes you aggressive and angry, and it heightens all of those negative emotions.
It makes you love nuts in your cookies. You gotta have them with nuts. You send someone back to the kitchen to recook those cookies to get some nuts in those cookies.
I think in his mind, the lame interpretation of that is that Spider-Man becomes an instant leather jacket wearing badass, right?
If Reddit was a thing stronger when this came out, he would have been a true monster. He would have had a TikTok channel that was unwatchable if this was a modern age change.
But I think that for the version of Peter Parker that Tobey Maguire presented to us in the prior 2 films, this choice actually makes the most sense. If you took that guy, right, the guy that was like, I just want to buy Mary Jane a hamburger, if you took that guy and you made him aggressive and angry, this is what you would end up with. The symbiote doesn't make him cool, right? Like, that's the thing, is that like, I think that's what Sam Raimi was going for here, and I think in a way for him to basically like turn his nose up at the character of Venom and at the black costume and all of that, because of the way that it was forced down his throat, so to speak. So he interpreted it in one of the most literal ways that he possibly could, which is that this symbiote is going to make Peter Parker the worst version of Peter Parker. That's not going to be cool. It's not going to sell you guys action figures. He is going to think that being a weird misogynist and walking down the street snapping his fingers to music no one can hear, that's what Peter Parker would do to be a badass, because this version of Peter is lame. He's a loser, right?
The best part of that scene, besides all the parts of that scene of him dancing
Yeah.
down the street with the double finger guns that was masterfully referenced in the Into the Spider-Verse movie,
Yeah.
is that like it's so I think it's supposed to be that he's giving off some sort of like sexy pheromone or something
Mhm.
like that. That's like, like making, but it does not have a universal appeal. So some of the women walking by him are like, "Hey, yeah," and a good couple of them are like, "What is with this nerd?" like,
Yeah. No, thank
what
you.
is
Yeah.
what is that? He goes to a jazz club in full emo mode. Um, I believe he whispers to the waitress, and keep in mind, all of this is off the dome. Besides me looking up like actor awards, the movie itself is all off the dome. I
Yeah.
think he whispers to the waitress, "Find us some shade sweet legs."
That sounds
I,
familiar. That sounds
I
about right.
believe it's that.
Listen, listen.
Slips her some money
I
against the
yeah.
table. Full dance routine where he announces, "Now dig on this," and then apparently learns to play the piano via symbiote.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, again, every choice where it's like, I would not have the bravery, I would not have the conviction of will to write that in a script, get
Yeah.
to the set, block it out, film it, edit it, put it out on a film. Like, some part of me would be like, we have to stop.
Yeah.
We can't do
It
this.
there's the saying that like it's a miracle that any film
Oh
ever
yeah, yeah.
gets made, right?
And
And
this one doubly so.
doubly so because you have to imagine that everybody on set that day was like, this is are we okay, so Sam, it says in the script that Peter's gonna come in, he is gonna call the waitress sweet legs. And then he is gonna take over the piano
Yeah,
and
that's
and do a solo. He is gonna dance, and then um I'm sorry, a couple pages later, so Bryce Dallas Howard she still finds him attractive after
yeah.
this.
So, and who's playing her dad? Like, who's a natural fit for the age and look of Bryce Dallas Howard? Because we know who her actual dad is Ron. We could get Ron Howard to play her dad. That'd be interesting. Oh, you want to get Academy Award nominated James Cromwell? You want to get Zephram Cochrane to come in and have his first contact with alien life be Venom?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You like the circle I just drew around both those things? You like how your brain's calculating that right now? That's why this movie's magical.
It really it's such an interesting place in time, right? Because you're coming off of two of the biggest movies of all time. Spider-Man 3 is also going to be one of the biggest movies of all time. And so anybody that is approached to be in this film is like, of course. Of course I'm going to be in Spider-Man
Yeah,
3.
yeah. Why would I
You
not
want
be
me
in
to
this
play
movie?
who? I don't
I'll
care.
drop
Of
whatever.
course I'll be in
I'll
Spider-Man
quit
3.
my longtime television successful series to be in this film with you. Hey, when my character's first introduced, can he be watching someone's daughter about to die and announce that he went on a date with them? He can? Awesome. Let's do that.
I yeah, man. Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3.
So
What
here's the
what
thing I want
what's
to.
what's left to say about Spider-Man
Oh,
3?
I got
Because
more.
because
But
I
here's
know
the
you do.
thing. Here's the thing is I want to discuss art. And I want to discuss what the word art can mean.
Okay.
This is genuinely important. So to me, a work of art does not necessarily only have to impact you with positive emotions. What it has to
Mm-hmm.
do is make you consider the world around you. That is what art does.
Yeah.
Like, I find some of my favorite artists are stand-up comedians. They make me re-examine the world that I'm living in and how I interact with it. It can be amazing, powerful art through comedy in that way. And
Yeah.
I think in terms of discussing the craft of film, of acting, of special effects, this film has furthered more discussions on the examination and the dissection and the enjoyment of what art is than any other film in the Spider-Man franchise. Maybe even the comic book franchise, but I'll at the very least definitely lock it down that this, out of any other Spider-Man film, has
Mm-hmm.
been the most discussed Spider-Man film. And in that, through having a bad movie, through having a weird negative experience, it's a reflection. It makes you look upon like, okay, well, what do I value in art? What do I want to do with this? And that is not a gift that can be taken away. that is something that once you watch this film, you are changed with how you interact with the art of film, of
Yeah.
comics, of interpretation, of adaptation. And you're just like, hey, how can a thing I love so much suck this hard? How can I go into
Yeah,
this? Am I
yeah,
still
yeah,
a
yeah.
fan of this property later? I need to examine my core values. I need to examine how movies are made. What happened to let this get into my brain? And if you can look at that and be like, that has no value in the world whatsoever, then you and I value the world in different ways. And that's fine. But I think you're wrong and I'm right and you should shut up. So,
I think the most interesting thing about Spider-Man 3 and its place in the pantheon of Spider-Man films specifically is
I have
the
a super
way
clip of it
that
going on a loop in the background right now, by the way, and it's just pure madness.
that's fantastic. It's the way in which it is the most bitterly spiteful, angry way to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is actually not the worst Spider-Man movie, right? Because the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is is um is offensively bad in how unremarkable it is
And
by the
I
time that
think
you're done that film.
here's one of the things to distinct between those two things. There's definitely a
Mhm.
comparison to make there for all the same reasons I just said. And that
Yeah.
examination continues. Where in Spider Man 2, you have, I think there's a reflective empathy to the filmmakers where it's like, you really thought you had something. You
Mhm, mhm.
really, like, this is you trying your best and it just wasn't good enough. And that's a bummer to watch. That's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not fun to watch it be like, oh, like you genuinely tried and had like there's so clear a planned future here for the stuff moving
Yeah.
forward. In this movie, he got Venom out on the screen. He's like, "What do we do to end Venom?" You see his skeleton. Like he
Yeah.
is done. Is what we do with Venom. He is not coming back. Like I
Yeah.
can't remember what film it was, but there's a film where the ghost of Will Ferrell had a skydiving accident, and a line I quote from it is, "I hit the ground and I did not bounce." It's like Venom is no longer a concern for us in this world because that's how
Yeah.
much I hate that character and I hate that you made me do this. And that, when you examine it, is fun. But you watch Amazing Spider-Man 2 and you're like, oh, I want better things happening for these people who like Jamie Foxx clearly has some stuff he wants to do here. Andrew
Yeah.
Garfield is so like every part of that opening scene of Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of the best Spider-Man scenes.
Like, and that like, and again, Amazing Spider-Man 2, one of the reasons why it's so tragic is because, like, pun intended, it falls from such an amazing height, and that back just snaps, right? Like in slow
Whoa.
motion. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
You made
Like it
Spacey for
just
the Stacy on that one. All right.
yeah, like we start that movie at such an incredible high of like, wow, we get one of my favorite things ever, which is when Spider-Man puts clothes on over the Spider-Man costume.
Hmm.
He's got his little toque, or as you Americans would call it, a beanie. If there are Americans listening, there are Americans listening. He's got his little vest on and whatnot, and you're just like, look at this adorable Spider-Man's got a cold, you guys. That's never happened before. um
Oh yeah, that was adorable. And that's
yeah,
again
it
going right back to the first thing I was talking about Spider-Man. Is Spider-Man was a character that is supposed to humanize the superhero condition.
yeah,
He's supposed to be the
exactly.
everyman. He's supposed to be us. And it's like, I've had a cold and had to do stuff, like
Yeah,
still go to work. He can't call off on a shift. I can see myself in this guy. He's doing a great job. And that's
yeah,
honestly like, so I mean, this is gonna be a real modern take for the back and forth. The word redemption in this moment in time, right in both of our brains, is being used for a nerd thing where I don't think either of us agree that it was a redemption,
yeah,
except for a redemption of fans recognizing hard work.
yes,
Um, and if I can just say the extra. Ahmed Best came back for some Star Wars, did a great job. He's always been doing a great job, but he
yeah,
had a real rough go of it because of some fans.
yeah,
um, But I will say, I think Andrew Garfield got a redemption in the last Spider-Man one of just like, no, he is cool. He literally had to
yeah,
have the other Spider people say to him, no, you're good, dude. Like
yeah,
he was redeemed. He was
and
like
also, yeah, and
baptized in the new franchise of the
yeah, yeah, and also to catch MJ and all, like, everything. I
right.
mean, like, look, I also Toby gets a great moment where he's like, "Oh my I've got this lower back thing," and it's just it's a reference back to the
Sorry,
whole.
I'm watching this loop, and it just reminded me of the part where Spider-Man 3, where they, in perfect animated Spider-Man font, wrote a message to him in web. And
Yeah.
it's like, hey guys, no. Like, that is like, okay, we're gonna have the message written in web, and then we're gonna have a British newscaster exactly talk out everything that's happening right now, just in case the audience stop paying attention. Like, again,
Which they did,
which
but
they
yeah.
did, but all of those choices were choices where you could feel like, what do you want now? I don't care what we did. They
It's
wrote her name in the
yeah,
web. We're done. And it's like,
yeah.
you can feel that release of like, listen, they stopped caring. I can stop caring. I'm just going to enjoy this.
It's
A
a like
Schadenfreude of a movie.
Spider-Man 3 is a 2-hour breakup video, right? And so all of those
But like
bad
at the end of that
choices.
breakup where you're like, oh yeah, like I wish him well for whatever they date next, but I am never going back to that person.
Yeah, exactly. Um yeah, it's amazing cuz again, like to bring it back to Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's like that movie just gets like offensively boring in the third act, and you
That is
don't
my
care
biggest sin
about
for a
so much
film,
of
is
it.
being bored.
Yeah. And then also, because it wouldn't be a perfect 10, it wouldn't be a podcast with me if I didn't compare this to The Rise of Skywalker.
Hmm.
But another movie that, like, The Rise of Skywalker does the same thing that Spider-Man 3 does, which is every time there is an opportunity to do something interesting, they make the wrong choice and they play it
You don't
safe.
think riding a
Uh,
horse on the side of a spaceship is interesting?
that it is one of the few things I think that made it through on that movie, that was like, well, this is something we've never done before in a Star Wars. But
Yep.
there's also some things where you're like, maybe there's a reason why we've never done some of this stuff before in a Star Wars. But
What if you stand at the right spot and the knife matches up? It's such a bad movie. It's such
it's
a bad
so bad.
movie.
It's so
But not
bad. And
fun. It's not fun
but
bad.
not fun, because JJ was legitimately trying to make a good movie, right? Legitimately
Yeah.
trying to make a good film. Whereas Sam Raimi here is not trying to make a good movie. And if there's one thing that
Sam
Sam
Raimi's trying to
Raimi,
get to the end of the day.
yeah, if there's one thing that Sam Raimi knows how to do, it's how to make a bad movie, but a bad
Mm.
movie that you're gonna love,
If you
right?
watch Darkman, which by the way should be remade with Josh Rubin as writer director, but if you watch Darkman and you want to see, like, Darkman is the most comic book movie Sam Raimi's ever made.
Yeah.
And it is bad. It is not a
Oh my
good
god.
movie. It is so fun. It is an amazingly fun movie.
Yeah.
It is, from every technical aspect, amazing decisions being made. But also in that one, again, the weird flip on that, where that was a lower budget one where he thought he had an amazing idea and was going real hard on it.
Yeah.
Um, and on that, like, his freedom just came through, and it's a great trip to be on. But there's that line between trying too hard, and I think the line is honestly budget.
Yeah.
Like, you watch The Room, which I have many times,
Hmm.
sometime live on stage with Greg Sestero. But you watch The Room, and you're like, this is a guy who thought he was doing great, had no money, everyone else just kind of went with it. There's some fun to
Yeah.
be had here. But then you watch like a huge budget one, like you're saying, of like a Rise of the Skywalker and Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's like they thought they were doing good, but it just got lost, and I'm
There's
sad.
I think the difference is that there's really just not an excuse, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like you like in both of those instances of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Rise of Skywalker, you have everything at your disposal, right? You have so much money. Anybody will die to be a part of this project. Everybody is working their hardest to make sure that this is a good thing. And what it comes down to at the end of the day is whether or not you had a good script to start
Yeah.
with, right?
You know
If
what? You
that
know what I want to do
foundation's
with
not
this
there.
film? I think here's the end of our film. We take Paul
Yeah.
Giamatti. We put him in an
Hmm.
amazing looking rhinoceros mech suit. We have him run right at Spider-Man. End credits, done. You don't want to see that, because you know how sometimes the superhero movies, they end and they're like about to say an iconic line and they cut you off, and that little cut off people really like Avengers, and then it stops. Or like, you know what I think this name of the Fantastic Four should be? It should be the Fantastic Four. You know, Fan Four Stick, everyone's favorite film. But like, that movie had that thing where like it'll be really fun if we almost get you to the thing you want. Like, no, you show me him fight Rhino. God damn it!
Yeah.
Like, I am mad at you right now. Did the movie end early? Put the rest of the movie on. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen in Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3, we see Venom's skeleton. And
We
then
see Venom
Peter
skeleton.
Parker has his other buddy die in his arms, who came back for Goblin, who, by the way, was using his sky stick to turn Sandman into glass, which was admittedly really cool. And and then he talks to Sandman, and Sandman's like, I killed your uncle, but I did it as like an oopsie ding. And Peter Parker's like, oh, I get that. That's cool. And then Sandman goes away. It's such a
Yeah.
bad movie.
He just leaves. He just leaves.
He's one
He
of the
just leaves.
only Sam Raimi. I think he's the only Sam Raimi villain who gets to punch Spider-Man and not die.
Yeah.
Besides Flash, who does show up as a cameo in the deep background of Harry Osborn's funeral, by the way. I want to bring up one other thing before we get to the end, because I know we're nearing the end here. Because originally, I want to let you know, dear listener, who has made it so far, and by the way, it's looking just great today. I know that sometimes you don't always feel good, but the smile on your face lights up a room, and I love to see it. But anyways, for you, dear listener, Michael wanted to make this like a 20-minute podcast. he didn't think we'd make it to the hour. We're making it. But there is a version of this movie called Spider-Man 3: The Editor's Cut that is an official version of this movie with different scenes in it. I don't know if you've seen or heard of this.
I didn't know that this existed.
So there is an editor's cut. In the editor's cut, there's an extra Sandman scene where he turns into a sandcastle to go and secretly play with his daughter to just further humanize that.
Yeah.
They actually cut a scene, which is the scene of Aunt May talking at length about how Uncle Ben proposed to her. There's like, we're fine, we don't need that. That's gone. But they also changed the scene. So at the end of the movie, the big like villain flip for Harry Osborn is the butler comes in and he's like, hey, by the way, I examined your dad's wounds when he died, and 100% it was his own glider that killed him, which actually proves nothing, because in the third new Spider-Man, he's about to kill Green Goblin with his own glider, which totally would have been those marks. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like that only says that Spider-Man stabbed my dad with his glider. That proves nothing. Like, but that's enough in the movie to make Harry Osborn be like, all right, I'll go help save MJ and Peter. In the editor's cut, Harry's just looking at a photo of the three of them together, and he realizes that they're in danger and that they were friends and that he loves them, and he comes to the decision on his own that like, hey, like, no matter what has happened in the past, like particularly MJ doesn't deserve what's about to happen. So if it means helping Peter to save the former love of my life, I'm gonna go do that. And it's a way more humanizing moment for him. But that circles me around to a thing I want to say of the bloopers for this movie. Have the actor who explains that the glider hit his dad and killed him that way doing that line a few times over. The actor is very, very old. He is a very old man who is just having trouble with this weird, dense comic book text. And they're really playing up like, look how wacky, he can't get through it. And it is the saddest blooper reel I've ever seen, of just an elderly man doing his best, but his best isn't good enough. Like, it's like, guys, no, don't show me this. And that in itself is this film where it's like, watch this. No one likes this. Watch it happen. We think it's funny. We think it's funny this is happening.
It's it's the superhero movie version of the scene in Clockwork Orange where they've pried his eyes open, and they're just playing all of this stuff to try and rewrite his brain. And yeah, it was very much it is so funny because I don't think that you could write an end to this era of superhero movies better than the just the wet fart that is a 1-2 punch of
and you just know, like,
Spider-Man 3 and Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, right? I mean, like, because then
same year.
yeah, like, because then the next year is The Dark Knight and Iron Man, and it's like, okay, well, now we're into a whole new world,
Yeah.
right? Like this is like forget everything you knew. This is what it is now.
But where does Ted Raimi
And we haven't
sort
looked back.
into all of
Yeah,
this?
where does Ted Raimi sort into it? Hey, here's a question:
Yeah.
Was Ted Raimi? Did he have a cameo in Doctor Strange?
Not that I
I
can
don't
recall
I don't
seeing. He
recall
might have
because
been he might have been a voice or a costume character or something, though, to be
yeah,
fair.
because we know that Bruce Campbell is the hot dog vendor, right? But
Oh yeah. Well, Pizza Papa always gets paid, as we know. I will say, if this movie was released now, we would have had like a limited series run on Disney Plus of Mr. Ditkovich and Ursula just happening to have a bunch of superheroes living in their apartment building, and I'm sad that we never got that.
well,
Also,
you know,
I will say
yeah,
my whole youth. When was this movie? 2007. That was youth still for me. That was early 20s. Um, I will say that I had the biggest crush on Ursula, and I was always mad that I'm like, she's right there, Peter. She wants nothing more than
yeah,
to love you. Just please, Peter, please acknowledge
yeah.
Ursula. Why? Why, Peter?
Yeah. It's one. She suffers from one of those like, oh, but for a movie, you're not the most beautiful person. But
She's
like,
so beautiful.
yeah, but to the rest of us, it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know. She seems cute. She got that cake for you, bud.
yeah. What are you doing?
What are you looking
And
for?
then she
Because MJ wants nothing
she
to do
knows
with you,
that he
dude.
and
Like,
MJ are having troubles, and
yeah,
MJ calls, and she obviously has feelings for them, but MJ calls and he's like, this will bring Peter joy. I am so happy for how supportive of a human
yeah,
being is Ursula. She's making him cookies, and she's like, this guy seems a little off right now. He seems like he's going through a tough time. But she's like, I'm gonna make him cookies, and he gets really demanding. He's like, I would like them with nuts. And he's like, hey, you know what? For you, it's nuts in the kitchen, my guy. We're gonna get this done. Like,
yeah. So what you're saying is justice for Ursula, right? Like I think that's where
I
we're
think we
at.
need
So
justice for Ursula. She deserves a spinoff. Also, the actor who played the butler was John Paxton, who was Bill Paxton's dad. I just looked that up.
there you go.
Just like, what else was he in? He also made it to Drag Me to Hell, and Oz the Great and Powerful. And Oz the Great and Powerful was a posthumous one. His last 3 films were all Sam Raimi.
Wow.
That's how that fella shucked loose that mortal coil.
Yeah, that's how that cookie crumbled.
Yeah.
I Interesting. What pact with a demon was written in order for that to happen. Because I am almost positive. I'm probably gonna get crap for this, but I am almost positive that Sam Raimi himself has a deal with some kind of devil that he gets to keep making these movies because I don't know, man. I think the guy's made one movie and then he just keeps putting different overlays on top of it.
I'll
And
have you
it's
know that
just
it's a
like,
very important deal that classic car of his shows up in every film.
um, yeah, it's a bit of an oddity to me that when they
He's
were like, we're not going to get Scott Derrickson to do the next Doctor Strange movie because of a difference of opinion. So who should we get? I know. Let's get Sam Raimi. He made those Spider-Man movies and, really crashed and burned that one into the ground. Let's give him Doctor Strange. Nobody cares about that
and I
character.
will say, as someone who right now with an Evil Dead blanket on his couch and Evil Dead
Yeah.
on VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray on my shelf right now, my favorite Sam Raimi script out of all the Sam Raimis, Hudsucker Proxy.
There you go.
Yeah, and
Uh,
like so that
yeah.
is, but that's why, because he had the Coen brothers with him, and he wrote a different
Yep.
movie that still has Bruce Campbell in it, but they made something that's like, hey, like because when it comes to Sam Raimi making a scene fun, there was a thing back I've heard where it was on one of the Scream movies when Wes Craven was still doing those. Part of the script just says Wes makes it scary, and I can
Yeah.
imagine writing a script and just be like, Sam Raimi makes this scene fun. Like just like you give that man a bunch of people doing some fast talk back and forth, you're gonna have a good
Yeah.
time with it.
Yeah.
And that's big. Hudsucker Proxy is all basic. I just realized I like Hudsucker Proxy because it's just all the Daily Bugle scenes, but as a movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
so if you like those, if you like just the Daily Bugle scenes from Spider-Man 3, I have the best news for you.
It's
And it
also
is
here's
called
the other
the
thing about
1994 film The Hudsucker Proxy.
it's also it's also not confusingly anachronistic in the way that the Spider-Man movies are, where you're like,
Yeah,
wait a
when
second, wait
and
a
where
second,
do
wait a
these
second.
take place for that film?
Yeah, because it's not that the movie itself is confused about what time period it's in. It's that individual characters don't know, right?
Yeah,
So like Pizza Guy from Spider-Man 2, I a very modern character, right? And then you walk into the Daily Bugle and everybody in the Daily Bugle is still in the 1940s for some reason,
yeah,
right? Like it just like we look over at Betty Brant and her hair definitely 100% not a modern haircut, right? And Elizabeth Banks doing her best to not
yeah. You
look
look over at Betty
absolutely
Brant and you're like,
ridiculous with
one
that
day, lady,
bullshit.
you're gonna direct a movie about a cocaine bear.
Yeah. Oh, oh goodness. I actually, you will be a weirdly, grossly sexual Rita Repulsa in a Power Rangers film.
I,
Um,
oh man, you want our next perfect 10? I'm gonna talk about the goddamn live action Power Rangers. I don't know why I called it live action. They're all live action, but I'm gonna.
they're all live
I
action.
I think the
Yeah.
Power Rangers film was a lot better than people gave it credit for.
Oh, the most recent one is one of my favorite movies of like the
It's
last
very.
10
I
years.
remember during
But
that film leaning over to my partner at the time and going, "Is this really good?" And she was like,
yeah,
absolutely baffled, like, "Yeah, no, it's a very good movie."
yeah. And then you get to the third act of that movie, and they're like, CG attacks CG, and you're like,
Yeah, they
okay,
just gotta follow that.
I
But like, I will say that movie was way better than it had any right to, and I think people just
oh,
didn't want to go see a Power Rangers movie. Like
100%,
that was it.
100%.
It was doomed from frame one. But like in terms of, and that is not a perfect 10 so bad it's good movie. That is like a 7 to an 8, pretty good lazy Sunday afternoon
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. You know what? We got to coin a term right now. Like yes, Power Rangers from whatever year that was. 20, what is that? That's like 2016 or something, 2017 maybe.
I'm having to
I
look up stuff.
Yeah, Power Rangers, I think 2016. Uh, that is a perfect 8. It's a perfect 8. It's it's not a perfect 10,
It's hard.
right?
2017, by the way. It's hard to sweet
2017.
spot
Okay.
in those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a perfect 8. It's so close to being a perfect 10, but it is just those two marks off.
Oh, that
Cuz
writer has the weirdest credit sequence.
it's
Can
yeah,
I know we're so off base for everything I know, but I need to tell you all the movies the guy who wrote the Power Rangers film did.
please do.
Kong Skull Island,
Yeah.
Need for Speed,
Okay.
Real Steel.
I'm sensing a pattern here. Continue.
Yeah, those are some interesting things. And then I think he played tow truck driver in Big Fat Liar and attendant in Norbit.
Well, you got to pay the
That is
bills.
a storied career for Mr. John Gattens.
Yeah. That is that,
I don't
yeah.
think we've been
That,
on focus for more than 2 minutes in this
no,
podcast.
no. Why would we be?
This
Why
can you
would
just
we
label
be?
this one ADHD fever dream? And it's just like, hey man, if you want to just disassociate for a solid
Yeah.
hour, good news, my guy.
I'm gonna give everybody a pro tip. If you're looking for a focused and insightful conversation on a podcast, don't refresh your feed on April Fool's Day.
Yeah. And
That is
also,
a
just if
free
you
piece
see
of
Tyler
advice.
James Nicol as guest on any of the
Yeah.
podcasts on the ThunderQuack podcast network, just know you're in for a good time, but a long time. You're gonna be here.
Yes, we are
Okay,
we
I'm
are
gonna
here
circle
for
around.
a
I'm gonna do
good
final
time and a
thoughts.
long
I'm
time.
gonna do final thoughts.
Okay,
I'm gonna do
final
this.
thoughts.
We're gonna get there.
Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3 infinitely rewatchable. The best part about
Yes.
Spider-Man 3, in my opinion, is if someone says I've not seen that movie, watching it with fresh eyes with them for the first time
Yeah,
is a chocolate cake of an afternoon. It is just
yeah,
watching
yeah.
someone's pure befuddlement and bafflement of like, why would you do this to me? And like it depends on the person. It's not gonna be for everybody, but if it's someone who gets it, someone who's having the good time, who's along for the ride,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a hoot of an afternoon. And again, afterwards, even if they hated it, you'd be like, "Do you want to talk about how much we hated that and how many wrong choices?" You'd be like, "Yeah, let's go for coffee. Let's go for a walk. Let's forever have jokes about this movie because we hated it so much that it circled back around to being a thing we quote at least once a week." I can look at one of my friends and say, "How's the pie?" and she knows to respond so good. Like there is no question what the next sentence is on that.
Yeah.
And we're Twin Peaks fans, so it could be damn fine, but she knows. It's so good. So in this film is a perfect 10 to me because art doesn't need to be perfect to be enjoyed. And that to
Yeah.
me is what this is. The biggest sin a movie can commit, I think we brought it up earlier, is being boring. It's being
Yeah.
boring, it's being forgettable. I felt sadness in Pacific Rim 2 when I was watching giant robots punch each other and monsters, and I felt nothing, and I just wanted it to be done. And that
Yeah.
bummed me out because Pacific Rim 1 is not a perfect film, but there's fun to it. And this kind of the same thing with Amazing Spider-Man 2, some of this other stuff where it's like, I want to be transported out of my body. And sure, on first watch, Spider-Man 3 didn't do that job because we didn't have the expectations, we didn't have the language for it. But as a
Yeah.
revisit, it transforms from like a -3 to a perfect 10.
It is, yeah. It is one of those things of like, it's amazing what perspective and time can do for a piece of art like this. And how many artists were not appreciated in their time. And yeah, it
You
takes
look at a
perspective
painting
sometimes.
of a bunch of Campbell's soup cans, and the point of that is not look how good I painted these soup cans. Look at the technique I used for these. The point is, I'm going to drive a discussion about art. Now, did Sam Raimi do that on purpose? No. Sam Raimi tried to make it to the next day because the next day is when the paychecks arrived.
Yeah,
But still, in his wake, he left a discussion about comics and art and the modern mythology of superheroes, and a thing that we can make an hour-long podcast episode out of,
yeah.
that countless others have also tread on this same hallowed ground as us. And like, if you don't see value in that, then how the hell did you make it this far into the episode?
you know, there are some
Oh, was this your
individuals.
perfect 10 of just raging through an hour of two idiots
Yeah,
talking about the worst movie you've ever seen?
there are some folks within our community, within the ThunderQuack community, that they will, for some reason, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, 15 years this August, right? And there are individuals who have yet to learn the lesson, that is, don't hit play, don't hit play. You have better things to do with your time. But I am so glad that they haven't learned that lesson, because it means that
Oh
you
no,
and I still get to do this. I mean, like, listen, I don't care if there's anybody listening. I still want to record
yeah.
episodes of
I will
podcasts
say
like
that
this
this
with
has
you.
Spider-Man 3 has a 6.3 on IMDb out of 10, but a 4.5 stars on Amazon.com. Bless
There
your
you go.
hearts, you absolute monsters.
Uh, but as far as an April Fool's perfect 10, uh, Spider-Man 3 is at the top of the list.
Can I
So
can I
it
can
was
I
yeah.
leave you with a 5 out of 5 stars top review for Spider-Man 3?
I wish you would. Please do.
5 stars from Troy, who reviewed this in March 16th, 2023. So pretty recently. Um, Title:
Fresh.
Just a Movie. Review: Played as it should. Which I think is actually a review of the physical property of the DVD. Five
That is
stars.
5 stars. 5 stars. Yeah, I bought a DVD. The expectation is that it would go into a player and play, and absolutely
5 out
100%
of
it did.
5, baby. Couldn't ask for more.
Uh, yeah, review not respective of content. Excellent.
I'm just gonna
Thank
click
you.
help real quick.
Yeah, good call.
Thank you.
Tyler, thank you
Yeah,
so much for joining me for this episode.
my pleasure.
An honor and a privilege as always.
I want to let
I
everyone know that we recorded this only because we're staying up to watch The Mandalorian tonight.
yeah, it's really, yeah. This is really just a way to pass some time.
Mhm.
Um, where can people, if they want more of whatever the hell this was,
Yeah.
where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me amongst my 180,000 followers on TikTok at Mr. Nicol, MisterNickel, which, by the way, is how you spell nickel, not LE. A lot of people want to do LE. I don't know why. or on Instagram at DorkZombie, where you can see me draw either real cute stuff or my burlesque friends, which make you have to tilt your phone away from other people when you watch my Instagram feed on public transit. So.
Perfect. I absolutely highly recommend it on both of those fronts. Also, I just highly recommend being friends with Tyler and
Yeah, you can do it.
telling
Great.
him. Yeah, telling him that we're gonna keep it to a short episode, so that he sends you a video response threatening that it will be an hour.
Hey, here's an important question. What did I show in that video? And the answer is 4 different action figures of J. Jonah Jameson, and I'm missing a 5th one, and I'm mad about it. There's a 5th one that was from the films where the action setting it has with that he hit his fist on the desk and the stuff on his desk shook. And I used to own it, and I don't know where it is, and I'm very sad.
I have no response to that. I just feel for you.
That's fair. Oh, now that I've mentioned him, he's here, and he wants photos of Spider-Man. Do me a favor. When we release this, don't even edit it. No audio level correction. All the coughs, all the ums and ahs and deep breaths. Just raw footage.
Listen, tell me you don't listen back to the episodes that we record without telling me you don't listen back to the episodes we record. I am the laziest podcaster on the internet.
I fell asleep to an episode of myself on a podcast one time, and it was a really weird experience, and I do not recommend it.
I have the justification. I like to say that the podcast is conversational, and I like the conversational aspect of it. So I like to leave the ums and the ahs.
The humanity.
Yeah. But the reality is that, like, listen, I just don't have the time or the interest.
Fair. All right. Well, so we got that out of the way. Do you want to start recording?
Yeah, we're gonna start this episode soon.
Yeah, we start now that we've organized our thoughts. Do you want to start in on this?
I'm gonna cut us off because if I don't, we will keep going.
No, do it. That's fair. I'll talk.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me.
You're welcome.
We'll be back soon with a proper episode of Perfect 10.
This was very proper. How dare you?
But listen, honestly, is it going to be that different from this? No. The point is that we had fun. That's what we're here to do. And we did do that. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/ThunderQuack, all that stuff. And I hope everybody had a wonderful April Fool's Day today. I miss now it's not
April Fool's
Day, but
I want to think April Fool's.
Yeah, oh my god, tragic. I
made everyone sad at the end. I'm Amazing Spider-Man 2.
On that note, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Yay. ThunderQuack Perfect 10 is hosted by me, Michael Cohn. Follow us on Twitter at ThunderQuackPod, on Instagram at ThunderQuackPodcast, on Facebook at ThunderQuack, and join us on Discord at ThunderQuack.com/Discord. Support the podcast by heading to Patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access, bonus episodes, and the ThunderQuack Perfect 10 Pop Quiz. ThunderQuack Perfect 10 is part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network. Thanks for listening.